Dana the Angry Citizen, coming to you on Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. And I'm really excited about my guest today. He's a Boston attorney. I met him a few years ago. He just told me 3 years, and it may have been that long. It doesn't seem that long, but I've been fighting this war so long against our corrupt government. It probably was 3 years back when the whole scam-demic started. And he was representing the Massachusetts State Police in their effort to resist the unlawful and unconstitutional actions of the government of Massachusetts and the authorities of Massachusetts that dictated to them that they must choose to either have a potentially lethal injection of an experimental nature administered to them, or lose their jobs, which I categorically denounce and decry as absolute insanity and tyranny and madness. And so I was thrilled to meet this man who was representing them. We had some great, we did, I think, 3, if I remember correctly. And so please welcome my guest. His name is Bill Gens, and he's a pretty good guy despite being an attorney. Bill, welcome back, man. It's really good to see you.
It's great to see you too. And it has been a long time. It's almost 3 years. It'd probably be about 3 years in like November or something like that.
Yep. And you've been busy.
I have. And
tell us, catch us up.
I'd like to go chronologically, but if I do, we're not going to be able to get to the stuff I prepared for you tonight, which is even more interesting than the fight with regard to the vaccines. But just a thumbnail sketch. I did represent the state police, and they were the tip of the spear. They were the first group in Massachusetts who were under this pressure to get vaccinated. And I determined at the time that there was really not going to be any meaningful relief to be had in the courts. And so what they needed to do was to organize and to develop strategies as a group. And we were a sizable group. We represented about a quarter of the force, so over 350 state troopers, and do whatever we could to delay the process, just to throw monkey wrenches into the machinery.
Okay.
Sabotage it. You know what the word sabotage comes from? Comes from France. The French workmen and peasants used to wear wooden shoes called sabots. And when they wanted to have a work stoppage, they'd chuck it into the machinery in the factory. And that's where the word sabotage came from.
Nice.
And so that was a strategy that we developed. In other words, they were trying to stagger the applications for exemptions from the vaccination. And so we determined we were just going to file them all at once and flood them. And it knocked them back several months. And that went on for some time. It wasn't a complete, defense or strategy in and of itself, but we were trying to get things out into the future, because I always felt that this COVID insanity was obviously it wasn't based on logic and reason. It was based on emotion, and you can't use logic and reason against emotion, but emotion is very difficult to maintain forever. Sooner or later, there was going to be COVID fatigue.
Good point.
So the whole idea was to delay that out, and also delay filing lawsuits until further down the road, until the courts became more receptive.
Sympathetic? Okay.
I don't want to say sympathetic, but more receptive.
Receptive, got it.
And they are more receptive now to some degree. It's by no means perfect, and there are still judges out there who will do anything they can to kill your case. We haven't had that happen with the state police. The state police pulled a good judge in their federal court case, but others have not been so fortunate. But that's a whole long thing that I could talk about. I also represented the Boston United First Responders. Boston First Responders United was actually their name, which was a conglomerate group of police, fire, EMTs, and later, believe it or not, teachers. I didn't think that there would be any teachers that would be resisting the vaccines, but there were some. You know, when the teachers got in touch with me, I said, you know, I thought you guys were all, you know, just Marxists, but apparently there was, you know, there was some sentiment there.
Good.
So we represented them. We filed a lawsuit on their behalf, which just got decided recently. But that lawsuit, win or lose, did its job because it warded off what their union was trying to do to them. The
Right.
union was stabbing them in the back and attempting to coerce them into a vaccination path. So
Okay.
when we filed the lawsuit, we served that lawsuit on the school board, and they backed off of the measures that they were thinking of doing.
Good.
So sometimes, you know, you can get a pragmatic victory,
Yes.
even if it's not a legal one.
Yes. Agree.
But you know, there were other cases along the way. We had mass cases and others, but I'll save that for another time if you're interested in that whole saga, that whole history, and even the status of the cases that still remain. But what eventually I ended up doing, much more so than even the COVID stuff, was free speech work, because the censorship and the
Right.
discrimination against people who were speaking out against the vaccines or against anything that the establishment was
Yes.
promoting really became a huge issue.
Absolutely.
And so for tonight, we pretty much plan to give you a presentation of the free speech work that I've done. I think that it might illuminate some aspects of lawfare, which we've all seen over the past several years.
Good.
And we've arranged for some screen shares too. I have my assistant Sam is here, and if you can technically accommodate a screen share,
Sure.
We can start with the case that really got me started in this. And before you start running that, Sam, are you there, Dana? Okay.
I am.
Yeah, you can leave the thumbnail up while I talk to him. Just a little bit of a background.
Yeah, what were you going to say? Go ahead. He'll be back when he gets time. Go ahead.
Okay. This video that we're going to show you is the result of, on the one hand, a telephone interview of me, and then somebody took the recording of that telephone interview and put video footage behind it to basically show a video story as well as the narration that I was giving. I didn't narrate the video, just that my words were married to it. And what this resulted from was a protest of a drag queen story hour in Jamaica Plain back in 2022. And the story tells itself. So why don't we roll that? And it's amusing, it's a little 6-minute piece.
Best
okay.
And worst dinner for your waistline. Sweet potato. Try to find
To viewers, let us know if you can hear that, because we sometimes have problems with this. So if you can't hear it,
hey, 99% of people.
I can hear it.
2022. A group of protesters protested a drag queen story hour at the Jamaica Plain Public Library. The protest took place. The drag queen story hour ended.
I heard them out on the street, and I was like, "Oh, they're here," which doesn't mean there wasn't also, fear.
The protest enders were trying to peacefully leave the premises. And the protest. They walked down Center Street. He took a right on Greeno Street, and they were pursued by a group of counter-protesters.
Yeah. Why do I have to get on the sidewalk with you don't? Why do I have to get on the sidewalk with you don't? Every one of us don't. Don't fucking touch me. Don't get the fuck out of my way. Really? Sorry. But she's in my fucking way.
There were approximately 40 police present, mostly on bicycles, but the police either didn't try or failed to keep the group separate. And the counter-protesters surged ahead of the protest group and attempted to block the sidewalk. When that didn't work, several of the counter-protesters attacked individuals in the protest group. One of those counter-protesters rammed his body into a protester, and then after doing that, he then punched the person who ended up as the defendant in this case in the head, knocking his cap off. The defendant in this case then wrapped him up in a bear hug, and that the crowd toppled him over onto the sidewalk, and that was the end of the incident. The DA's office also made a motion in the case to keep the videos from being distributed to the public. Those videos were not too flattering to their charging decision. The police did not charge any of the protesters with assault and battery, even though it was clearly documented on video, multiple assaults and battery. They only charged the two people with a fray, which is engaging in a public brawl. At the arraignment, the district attorney's office dropped the charges against the person from the counter-protest group. And when I say person, that's gender indeterminate, because the police report described him in one place as Mr. and another place as female. Suffice it to say, he showed up to his arraignment in a dress, and they promptly dropped the charges against him and vigorously pursued the charges against Christopher Hood. All they could say was prosecutorial discretion. That was why they didn't prosecute the rainbow person. The transgenders, as well as the far left, are protected demographics. They can start fires and throw bricks and assault people and face no penalties or minimal penalties. Whereas people who are just defending themselves or defending others can find themselves really tied up with all sorts of legal difficulties. We went to trial on Tuesday, the 13th of June, and we completed it on the 14th, and he got a not guilty finding, which we're quite pleased with. And the reason why they're attacking these people who are peacefully protesting and peacefully leaving is, well, it's the same reason a dog can lick his genitals, because he can. And they know they can. And they know that they're not going to face penalties for it. Back when Judge Kavanaugh was getting confirmed, various persons invaded the Capitol building and occupied offices, cornered senators in elevators, berated them, threatened them. And the most that anyone got out of that entire incident was a $35 fine. Nobody went to jail. Nobody faced, years and charges carrying years in prison. And on January 6th, you get people who were beckoned in by the Capitol Police and others, and who just walked between the velvet ropes, and some of them are spending time in solitary confinement to this day and facing charges of up to 20 years in prison. This is a weaponized justice system, a two-tier justice system, and it's very, very unfortunate. And so we fight against it, and when we win, it's cause for celebration. And we've seen it time and time again. January 6th is a great example. But you see it with store owners who are getting robbed and use the same force that's being threatened against them, and they end up on trial. You need better DAs and better police. Plenty more fights on the horizon. I've got at least 4 more in Massachusetts and 7 more in New Hampshire. I got somebody being prosecuted in New Hampshire for disorderly conduct because a police officer, and only a police officer, claims that he heard her utter the word amen. There's a video of the entire event. It's not audible on the video, and she's got people all surrounding her. You watch the people. Nobody reacts to it. Nobody heard it, if she ever even said it. And they're trying to prosecute her at the behest of the governor. So is his name. This is what we're dealing with nowadays. My preference is to defend robbers and rapists because nobody cares about their politics. They get a fair trial.
That's pretty disturbing. Deeply disturbing. I'm not surprised. I hate to say it. I'm not surprised. We've seen injustice everywhere. It's sickening. It's disturbing. It's un-American.
Indeed. The reference in there was to a lady named Therese Grinnell, who was part of what has been called the New Hampshire Nine, and that was a group of people who didn't really know one another. I mean, I think that there was a couple of couples amongst them, but the nine didn't know each other. They were just all attending a meeting of the Governor's Council up in New Hampshire, and their protest was against the governor accepting all sorts of extravagant federal funds in exchange for vaccine measures. And they were protesting this. They were protesting against the vaccines and against the use of their tax dollars to go for this, and the obvious grift that was going on with the exchange of this vast amount of money. And during the meeting, they all stood up and turned their backs on the governor, which enraged him. And then we have footage that some people fortunately took while they're facing the wrong way. We should have probably queued this up as well, but we didn't. While the protesters have their back to the governor, he's texting on his phone, and then he looks to his right, nods, looks to his left, nods, and the police converge and start grabbing them out of the audience. And the claim against Therese Grinnell is that she had uttered the word amen. We had to fight that, by the way, for I think it was a year and 9 months, and I finally got all the cases dismissed. And I didn't really get it dismissed on legal grounds. I was having a terrible time with motions with the judges up there. They were all wearing masks. They weren't really paying attention to the law as we know it. But when it came time to go to trial and I subpoenaed the governor, and there was a whole big fight about that, then the governor backed down and ordered his people, because the prosecutors weren't DAs. They were people in the Department of Public Safety that worked for the governor, and he ordered them to abandon the cases. So he didn't want to get cross-examined. A wise decision by him. And he was there. He was a material witness, and we were going to show the videos of what he did and all the rest of that, and he knew it. So that was another case that was happening around that time period. Since then, there have been several others in New Hampshire. We had a group that hung a banner off of a highway overpass, and the banner had an edgy message. It said, "Keep New England white." Okay. And the Attorney General's office in New Hampshire brought a civil rights action against them, claiming that they were violating the state civil rights statute, which prohibited committing various acts, including trespass. And they were saying that this was somehow a trespass on a public bridge that is racially motivated. Well, mean, perhaps it is racially motivated. They were calling them white supremacists. I'm not so sure that message makes you a white supremacist. It might make you a white separatist or a white identitarian, and maybe all those things are things that people don't like. But in our defense, we produced materials showing movements that had signs posted on telephone poles and on the internet and everything that said "Keep Harlem Black," "Save Chinatown," "Keep America Christian." I mean, these type of messages are all over the place. They're part of the discourse in a free society. True. And free society is a messy society, and from that mess, we, free thinking and conscientious people try, and I think generally succeed in getting at sound and truthful views.
Agreed.
The only alternative is state suppression and censorship and the like.
Agreed.
So, in any event, we won that case up in New Hampshire on free speech grounds. The Attorney General appealed it, and we just argued it about a month ago up in the Supreme Court of New Hampshire. And I'm very optimistic about the results of that matter. I think we will continue to win it.
Good to hear.
In the meantime, they brought another case against them because they were protesting in New Hampshire a drag queen story hour, and they're trying to use the state's employment discrimination statute against them. In other words, claiming that their actions in protesting the drag queen story hour were discriminating and attempting to coerce the employers of the establishment not to hire these drag queens. I mean, they just don't get it. It has nothing to do with the employment of these drag queens. If the drag queens had been employed as dishwashers, there never would have been a protest. The problem is it was directed at children.
Right.
And, we filed a brief in that case with pictures of children stuffing dollar bills into the brassieres of strippers, drag queen strippers, and
crazy.
Even if it's heterosexual strippers, it's just as problematic.
Yeah. There's a line. This is what a lot of people don't seem to understand. It's a very clear line where you want to do what you want to do, and that's fine. Okay, I never understood why men would want to dress up as women and dance around or whatever. But hey, if you want to, it's a free country.
Yeah, go ahead. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with
when you start involving children in this now. That's when I have a hard stop. No, children should not be subjected to any kind of sexually explicit materials, images. Why would anyone think otherwise? It's not about inclusion, because you don't have to teach children to be inclusive. They are. You have to teach them not to be. You have to teach them to be racist and sexist, and because on their own, they get along great.
Yeah, that's true. And, the problem with exposing children to material that they're not yet equipped to handle. It doesn't merely matter what the orientation of that material is. Yes. I have just as much problem with young children, attending a strip club and watching heterosexual exhibitions as I would, with this.
Agreed.
And but they're trying to make these people of this a certain orientation into sacred cows. It's just like if you were protesting an abortion center, assuming you're against abortion, it's not about the employment of the people in the abortion center. It's about the activity that goes on inside it. And so anyway, that we're slugging it out with them on that. They also have a suit. When that suit was filed, a companion suit was filed by the AG in Massachusetts, who is of the same ilk as the one in New Hampshire. The only difference between them is the one in New Hampshire, the AG there, is a Republican, and the one in Massachusetts is a Democrat. As Sinclair Lewis once said, two wings of the same bird of prey.
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
So-
And most people, I think, are waking up to that to a certain extent, Bill, to the fact that, Republicans and Democrats really pretty much the same thing. They speak differently, but we always arrive at the same point. We the people always end up with footing the bill. The stuff we need to happen doesn't happen. We have 13 dead Marines in Afghanistan, $40 billion sent off to fund a war in the Ukraine, like we have any obligation or should care about a war in the Ukraine while there's homeless veterans sleeping on the streets. It is absolutely vile. It makes my blood boil.
And well, anybody who retains any sort of distinction between the two political parties, I would strongly recommend that they go back and watch the video footage of our Congress people all waving Ukraine flags right in the halls of Congress. And then for a sequel, they can watch Bibi Netanyahu addressing Congress and getting like 58 standing ovations.
Yep.
In our Congress, somebody from another country.
Yep.
So, all that stuff, it, as we say in the law, res ipso loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. So anyway, to soldier on with our free speech activities, we also represented, in addition to the New Hampshire 9, what has been called the Canton 9. And who were the Canton 9? We didn't represent all 9. We represented 6 of the 9. There were 3 that had other attorneys. They were protesting on Main Street in Canton against the Karen Reed prosecution.
Okay.
And one of the...
If you would just take a moment to, in case people who are watching are not familiar with Karen Reed, just give us a very quick summation.
A quick thumbnail of Karen Reed. Karen Reed was in a relationship with a fellow named John O'Keefe, who was a Boston police officer. And on a particular winter night, I can't remember the exact date, I think it was in April of 22 or something like that, they were out with a group of people partying and drinking at bars and stuff like that. And then there was an after party at the home of another Boston police officer his home was located in Canton. And she dropped him off at the home. And that's when the story diverges in many different directions. But essentially the people in the home claim he never came inside, and that his body was later found out on the lawn, and she claims that she dropped him off and didn't see him again until the next morning when his body was found.
And she's charged with his murder, and that's why she's now in court, because they've charged her with murder, claiming that she hit him with her vehicle and drove off. Exactly.
And there's a zillion things wrong with the case. And it ultimately ended in a hung jury. It probably should have been a screaming not guilty. One of those, in my opinion, it was one of those cases that the jury should have come back in 10 minutes not guilty. But I don't know exactly the breakdown. Sometimes juries, it's very rare, but sometimes they'll hang 11-1 or 10-2. Usually when they hang, it's 6-6 or 7-5. It's a more even split. But, one person who wants to hold out for whatever reason can hang a jury up. And the jury did hang up. But prior to the verdict and prior even to, I think, the beginning of the trial, I don't think the trial was underway yet, that as Karen Reed had lots and lots of supporters, people who were following the case, people who were seeing all the many things that were wrong with the case, and just a sampling of the things that were wrong. You can share that photo there, Sam. We're gonna do a screen share for you here again. The things that were wrong. The people, they never went inside the house and interviewed the people in the house. Those people threw their phones away. There was deletions of their text activity. There was one thing after another that was highly suspect, especially for people who were police officers themselves or associated with police officers. The investigating officer was socially involved with the people who were part of the crime scene. Let's put it that way. So in any event, you have the screen share in front of you. This group here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's the Canton 9. And they're on Main Street in Canton on a public sidewalk that actually recedes into like a park-like area. You couldn't find a more public location than this. They have signs that say "Free Karen Reed," justice. In any event, one of the I don't even think he was a witness. He was a relative of a witness. Had a business establishment on Main Street, a little ways up the street, and he calls up the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor's office had hired some guy as a quote unquote special prosecutor to prosecute Turtle Boy, who they also prosecuted for his aggressive news coverage of this event. And this guy, in turn, calls the police, takes about 5 or 6 phone calls, but talks them into going down and charging these people with, among other things, intimidation of a witness.
Wow.
And so we had a series of hearings. Those all... we won the one for the juvenile. This kid right here is a juvenile at the time, and we won his hearing straight out. The others took a little bit more protracted proceedings, but these are solid people here. One of them is an accountant, and another one is a what does Deanna do?
She just graduated with a master's degree in criminal justice.
Yeah, master's in criminal justice. I mean, these aren't people with any sort of records. They're solid people with jobs. They pay taxes, and they get treated like this.
It's disgraceful.
Yeah,
vile.
And there's a good misuse of a weaponization of legal process that isn't so much ideological as it is just expedient for the powers that be. In the Karen Reed case, by the way, the district attorney there issued a public statement that was far and away the most intemperate and unethical statement I've ever heard from a district attorney's office anywhere. He was essentially vouching for the credibility of his witnesses. He was claiming that anyone who doubted the state's case was a nut job or a conspiracy theorist. I mean, that's just not appropriate for a district attorney with a pending case to do. He got reported to the Board of Bar Overseers for that. As far as I know, that complaint is still pending. It wasn't my complaint. Some other lawyer put one in. And there was also a federal investigation of the investigation into of the Karen Reed case. There's a lot of things that were wrong. And here are people exercising their rights of freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, petitioning the government for redress of grievances, and here's how they get treated. You'd think we were in Soviet Russia or something like that.
We're one step away, and it seems like people are blindly oblivious to it and even endorse it. They really, a lot of them really act like they want this. They can't wait to be ruled. They want someone to tell them what to do, and they want anyone that doesn't do what they're told to do to be ruthlessly punished. And it's shameful. It's disgraceful.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter to me what the viewpoint is that I'm defending. Okay, they could be any part of the spectrum. I mean, they could even be a LGBTQ activist or a climate change protester or whatever. They have a right to express their views.
Agree.
But that's not how the other side looks at it.
Nope.
Not even close. And that's what we're going to get into next here, which is what's happening or what's been happening in Boston. This was triggered by the production in a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request. Massachusetts has its own title for that, but we'll call it FOIA because your viewers, I'm sure, are more familiar with Freedom of Information Act requests. and it produced a list that was sent from the mayor's office to the Boston police of approximately 14 people. Each and every one of those persons on the list was both a anti-vaccination activist and a critic of Mayor Wu, who had her own vaccine mandate that she attempted to institute in Boston. It got tied up in the courts, and eventually she won in court, but it was post-COVID. The Ukraine psyop had overtaken the COVID psyop by that point in time. Once again, another example of delay working to the benefit of the public in a way that our constitutional protections sadly haven't. In any event, this memorandum, this email, this list was dubbed in the press quite appropriately, I think, the Mayor Wu's enemies list. And
sounds about right.
Yeah. Once again, note the parallel to certain totalitarian regimes. They do that too, as well as censorship. They have they have enemies lists. Some of the people on that list were very active protesters. Why don't we? Oh yeah, let's.
It's up right now.
Oh, it's up right now. That is the email there. It goes from Dave Vittorini of the mayor's office to Robert Ciccolo of the Boston Police, pd.boston.gov, and it's copied to Tiffany Chu at the mayor's office and a Brianna Miller at the mayor's office. Some of the people on this list, they went after civilly because Shana Catone was a Boston police officer, and they instituted all sorts of disciplinary actions against her. But the four that we're going to talk about are Sean Nelson, Catherine Vitale, Shannon Kay, real name Shannon Llewellyn, and Michelle Effendi. And each of those got at least one arrest while protesting. The most interesting one of all, let's put up. We're gonna go a little bit out of order. Number 3, the City Hall one with the banner.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. No, this one, right?
Just so you know, Bill, we're getting quite a few comments. My Streamyard isn't posting a lot of the comments. It stopped early on in the podcast, but we got some great comments from a few people. So we're getting some traction. There are people listening, and my friend Beth Curtis said we need more lawyers like you, William. She's talking to you, man. So that's a huge compliment for a bar attorney.
I wish there were more lawyers because I have more work than I can possibly handle. Okay. This photo here, which is a little bit blurry, shows you on the left of the screen, the heavier set gal, that's Catherine Vitale, who, by the way, was a candidate for city council on the ballot. She didn't win, but she was a balloted candidate. On the right is Shannon Llewellyn. They're in front of City Hall with the banner, "Shame on Wu." That was a slogan that they came up with early on, and it had some traction. And
very catchy, very catchy,
and very appropriate.
Shame on Wu.
In any event, their protests at City Hall weren't really working out so well because during the lockdown period, especially, because City Hall was essentially closed, and the mayor, like a lot of people, was working from home and doing Zoom stuff. So what they did was they went to the mayor's residence and held protests out there right on the street. And there they are in their sundresses, shame on Wu, and they have free speech signs too, because by this point in time, the mayor had succeeded in getting the city council to pass a ordinance that claimed to prohibit targeted residential picketing. The definition of picketing was very interesting. It even applied whether you had a sign or not, whether you said anything or not. Just standing there would be subject to the ordinance. That apparently wasn't enough to satisfy the powers that be, and they got ultimately charged not just with the violation of the ordinance, which is a $50 fine, but with disturbing the peace.
Disturbing the peace.
Yeah. And there's a long history of disorderly conduct and disturbing the peace being misused against legitimate peaceful protest. This was another example of it. But what I discovered in the wake of finding that email with the list, the enemies list, together with the treatment of Chris Hood in West Roxbury on the video that we saw earlier, was that the district attorney's office was vigorously prosecuting the people on the enemies list. And at the same time, we went back in time and started reviewing protest arrests starting with May 31 of 2020. This incident here is just one of many incidents that took place on May 31st, 2020. We see the burning police car. You can see at the front of the car, there's a protester stomping on the hood of the car while it's burning. They broke into buildings, they looted buildings, they set fires, they were throwing bricks, they were assaulting police officers. Well, we tracked down all the arrests. 52 arrests. Out of it, only 2 convictions.
Wow.
And we believe that those weren't really protesters, they were just opportunistic looters. That's why they went so soft on everybody else. There were, 35 felony arrests that were associated with that. And we have our statistics here. And 35 felony arrests. The 2 convictions, everybody else got a dismissal.
Crazy.
So you have felonies going on all over the place, hospitalized police officers, etc. Then we brought that forward. And this DA that we have right now took office in January of 22. So he's not entirely responsible for what the treatment of the George Floyd protesters, although some of their cases, because of the shutdown of the courts during COVID, the dispositions took place during his tenure. So that's why we went back that far. But then what we started doing was surveying all protest cases from May 31st, 2020 onward, with a special emphasis on January 2022 when Kevin Hayden took office as as district attorney of Boston to the present. So we got a good solid 2 years there. And the statistics are, during that 2 years, each and every protest case, if it wasn't an anti-Mayor Wu or anti-vaccine protest or anti-drag queen story hour protest, was dismissed. 100%, batting 1,000, felonies and misdemeanors. Most of them dismissed prior to arraignment. That means you don't even get the charge on your record. For the people on the enemies list, each and every one has been vigorously prosecuted.
Hardly shocking. And also that's happened here in Maine, Bill. I don't know if you've seen any of that or delved into it, but we had protests in Portland, Maine, the Black Lives Matter protests, and we had incidents of they were throwing bottles of pee at the police, bottles of urine at the police. The prosecutor refused to prosecute these cases, and he left some lame message about that they had suffered enough, or some, excuse my French, bullshit like that about why they were not going to prosecute these people who assaulted police and damaged property and It's despicable. It's just it's flagrant favoritism.
Well, yeah, it's a two-tiered justice system, two-tiered dispensation. In any event, so that he's vigorously prosecuted all of those people. By the way, within the group of protesters that we surveyed, we found many repeat offenders, some of them repeat felony offenders.
Wow.
And we found some of them were taking their arrests with the drop charges and monetizing them on social media to raise funds to finance future protests. They had a cottage industry.
Wow.
So what we started doing was raising what's called a selective prosecution defense on behalf of these people on the Mayor Wu's enemies list.
Good.
One of these cases, well, let's scroll through the photos. Let's go back to the burning police car. Okay, so we talked about this here. That was a source of, that's what got us started when we saw the treatment with all those felonies for George Floyd. But then we took it forward, and let's go to the next one. Here they've got the Moakley Bridge that connects South Boston to downtown completely blocked off for hours. Traffic in Boston gridlocked. It's not the only place that they did it at. They did it strategically at intersections throughout the city. People who had half-hour commutes had 3 or 4 hour commutes as a result of it. Others blocked off at different protests blocked off the BU Bridge. Other people chained themselves to the doors of Faneuil Hall, and nobody could get in or could get out until they cut the chains off. Many such incidents involved in our survey like that. Another one was blocking off a construction site in East Boston. That was climate change protesters. They like to do blocking. Although the Palestinian protesters did as well. The protests that we called them the approved protesters, were, generally speaking, George Floyd and racism type concerns, climate change, LGBTQ, and either side of the Palestinian conflict.
Okay.
Why is that? Because the powers that be, at least within the Democratic wing of the bird of prey, sees both sides of that as part of their constituency. Okay, so they don't want to lose votes or support or whatever. And the Palestinian protesters, when the climate change stuff, which generally recedes during the wintertime, they don't protest during snow season. But the Palestinian protesters came out, so it helped fuel our supply because we were collecting receipts, so to speak. Let's go to the next one. This is climate change protesters who went into the State House and dropped their pants and had a message, I don't want to say tattooed, but festooned upon their rear ends for the lawmakers and the public to, savor. Michelle Effendi, who is one of the people on the list who has been charged all this time, merely attempted to enter the State House at a time when it was just a brief 13-day period, apparently, when the State House was prohibiting the public from entering unless they showed proof of vaccination. And she has been prosecuted now for 2.5 years.
Shameful, despicable, unbelievable.
Let's go to the sundress one next. There you go. Okay, that is right before Shannon Llewellyn on the right and Catherine Vitale in the middle here with the blue top got arrested for disturbing the peace in West Roxbury. They, I handled their case up until the trial, and by then we had loaded it up with all sorts of legal issues that if they lost, an appeals court was going to, it had a lot of mileage in terms of the things that were wrong with it from a free speech point of view, this point of view of the unlawfulness of this ordinance, as well as the selective prosecution. They decided at the last minute that they wanted to try the case themselves.
Huh.
And, I did the best I could to prepare them because, they're the furthest thing from lawyers. So I gave them my one semester course that I used to teach in trial advocacy in an afternoon, and they managed to absorb some of it. In any event, either through that or through the total ineptitude and bias of the district attorney that handled the case, as well as I think probably a perceived bias for the judge that the jury had, because the judge was just ruling against them throughout the entire trial. They won. They got not guilty verdicts for both of them.
For them. Good
Yeah.
for them.
And so why don't we go to that video, their little celebratory video, just a little bit of entertainment.
I like entertainment, Bill. Relieves the constant tediousness of fighting this war against.
Well, I mean, some of this stuff is so silly. It's,
Totalitarianism. It really is. It's insulting. Our founding fathers are spinning in their graves to see this.
No doubt about it. Okay, can you run it?
They went pro se and represented themselves and beat Kevin Hayden. Wait, and then the best part is Kevin sent his best handyman to do the job. Not guilty. Michelle. Not guilty. And they went pro se.
Nice.
Yeah, that was outside the West Roxbury Courthouse after the verdict. And to commemorate their achievement, I put together a little meme. Why don't we post that up?
It's coming. There we go. Nice. Love it.
Two mothers of young children who never, had a lawsuit or anything like that in their life, and they went in there and they got the job done.
Nice.
I mean, I think it does show you something, though. The most democratic instrument in our society is the jury, more so than voting or anything else like that. And I think that the public, even though we're always so upset about the people who are lagging behind, who are still wearing masks, who do whatever the government says, the public in increasing numbers is getting very much fed up with all this nonsense. There's something in the establishment agenda to piss off everyone at this point, no matter whether you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, etc. It's just not right what's going on. And so we're still fighting this battle on behalf of Michelle Effendi and Sean Nelson. In fact, in Michelle Effendi's case, some judge in the BMC, I won't name him by name, but he's a real mental midget. He denied her even the a threshold discovery in her case. Just, you can't have any discovery, essentially. And we've got an appeal going up that's in the Supreme Judicial Court on that issue right now. I mean, this is just dumb stuff, but this is the way that some people think, and some of them wear robes and some of them have willpower. Incidentally, do we have, why don't you get me Kevin Hayden's public statements, the compendium on that?
Sure. I can put it on the screen.
Yeah, if you can put it on the screen, that'd be great. This is public statements of the district attorney of Suffolk County, the one who was dismissing the cases against all these approved protesters and vigorously prosecuting the ones who do not meet with his approval, who are expressing anti-vaccine sentiments or anti-Mayor Wu sentiments, anti-woke sentiments. I'll read out the top one here. To be very clear, I do not support anti-vaxxers and condemn in the harshest terms the relentless protest that took place at your home. He's addressing Mayor Wu. He's expressing solidarity with her.
Right.
We have worse ones than that. Here, this is a great one. Boston elected officials of color condemn hate directed at Mayor Wu, where they essentially, if you read at the bottom of this, no, you're going too far. The bottom of the paragraph, the first paragraph here, statement condemning the ongoing threats of violence. There were no such threats of violence, and hateful attacks directed at Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. We must be unapologetic in rooting out white supremacy, racism, misogyny, and hate in all its forms. I mean, this statement is directed essentially at women: Michelle Effendi, Catherine Vitale, Shannon Llewellyn, and they're calling them misogynists.
Right.
Go figure. Okay. And by the way, Sean Nelson is a black man.
Well, it's like a label bill. It's like a stamp. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have this stamp that I paid for that I was getting junk mail. So I bought this stamp that says return to sender. So I didn't have to keep writing it on the envelope. So I just push like that. That's what they do. They say, well, I'm not very happy with you. They go racist.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially
misogynistic.
Yeah. It's schoolyard stuff. They just call names, you know. You know, in school, the little kids will say, "You're a doo-doo head," okay, and
exactly
that's their logic. Let's skip to the next page. There's more good stuff in here. This is great. They're talking about Mayor Wu. It is due to her brave and steadfast leadership, her commitment to science and the public health, including her common sense and life-saving vaccine mandates.
Oh, man.
That Boston is making necessary progress to combat this pandemic, blah, blah, blah. And this is the type of thing that you have.
Yep.
We stand in solidarity with her and call for an immediate end to this dangerous and hateful behavior. So according to them, peaceful protest is dangerous and
dangerous. Exactly.
This is just, you know,
it's communist.
This is what's motivating these people, including this DA, this mayor, and at least some of the judges. To be fair, other judges have been very sympathetic to our cause. It's not monolithic. And the SJC in Massachusetts, while I am highly critical of their jurisprudence in other respects, especially with regard to COVID, has been a bulwark for free speech. I think that their conception of the good society is you can have tyranny and free speech at the same time. I don't think that you can, but at least they're holding on to free speech. I don't think that we would get as dispensation that good from Mayor Wu or from Kevin Hayden.
Right.
Or from Maura Healey, who as Attorney General sided with the governor and all the COVID mandates in every single case. No exceptions.
Yep.
So in any event, that's the battle, the free speech battle that we've been fighting. In a sense, it's the most important fight that there is, because without that right, all the others will fall.
Absolutely.
I could say pretty much the same thing with regard to the Second Amendment. And, it bothers me sometimes when I hear the Second Amendment defended in terms of, well, you've got a right to self-defense. That's not the reason we have that Second Amendment. The reason is to protect against governmental tyranny.
Absolutely correct. Yep. And our founding fathers knew what they were doing when they wrote it. And there are those people that say it doesn't mean what it says. It absolutely does.
But each and every one of the founding fathers has something very strong to say about the Second Amendment, including George Washington, who is extremely articulate on that issue. But that's what we're up against, is the corrosion and erosion of those constitutional protections.
Very true.
Things don't in the world of our opposition. Words don't mean what they say they mean. like Humpty Dumpty said, words mean whatever I say they mean. They're like Humpty Dumpty. So it shall not be infringed. Is there any wiggle room there? I don't think so. The Article 30 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, separation of powers. The executive shall never execute the legislative function. Well, we spent 15 months between 2021 and 2022 with the governor issuing laws from behind closed doors. No debate, no vote, no representation. Just
same thing here in Maine.
Government by fiat.
Just absolutely. And I would ask the question, simple questions. I'm a simple guy. What's a mandate? Show me this mandate. Show me where it says that the governor has the power to do this, the authority. Show me this lockdown. A lockdown is in a secure facility like a prison or a military base. The governor has no lawful authority to demand that we, the people, stay in our homes or shut down our businesses. It's a giant crock of bull.
Well, the initial challenges against the lockdown measures, against the mask measures, then even the stupider measures like social distancing and the plexiglass and all the rest of that, attempted to invoke those rights, and that more or less fell on its face. The approach I took was somewhat different, but that's a topic for a different video.
I was just going to say that very same thing. That's a whole new discussion.
I can walk you through that entire history, which is still going on, mostly in terms of the vaccine controversy. But we still have a lockdown case still left. My cases took much longer to resolve because they were brought from the defense side instead of going in as the plaintiff saying, these are my rights, vindicate my rights, which didn't work too well for those plaintiffs. We said, we're not going to comply with you. F you. Okay. And so they couldn't dismiss our cases. We would have loved to have had the cases dismissed because we were the defendant.
Right.
So ours lasted much longer, and I can tell you how they fielded those and how my clients have made out, and they've made out very well, by the way.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm
but
glad to see some
still,
justice.
The state of the law is in bad shape. It's leaving a legal legacy that's very concerning, but that's for another day. And if you want to get together and do a follow up on that, now that we've covered the free speech stuff, we can do that. Okay.
I definitely will take you up on that, Bill. And I'm really glad to see you. I'm glad that you were available to come on and update everyone on this. I hope for my viewers, I hope you all share this. Especially if you're living in Massachusetts, this affects you. And folks, we the people do have the lawful means of remedy available to us if we pursue it. It's going to take a lot of us. You have to get involved. You have to find like-minded people, get together with them, promote. Letters and phone calls to elected servants do matter. Everyone says, oh, they don't matter, but those are just the lazy people. They don't want to do anything. It's their excuse not to do anything. Oh, that won't matter. It won't help. You can't win. It's all fixed, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just hard work. And you have to actually do something. You have to actually participate because this is a government by the people for the people unless you don't do your job. And then it's a government by rich people to do whatever they want, including taking away all of your rights. And as I've said many times, your rights are mine and mine are yours. So if yours get taken from you, mine can be taken from me. And I am not going to sit by and let that happen. So any parting words for our audience tonight, Bill?
Well, stay strong, stay focused, and stay prepared.
Thank you. Well said. So to all of you watching, thank you. Please share this. Let everyone who might have an interest in it see it. Bill is doing a bang-up job down there. I'm not usually a fan of bar attorneys, but that's a whole other broadcast that we won't get into now. But Bill is definitely taking strides and making progress there in Massachusetts. And I invite like-minded people to contact me. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook under The Angry Citizen. My new website is theangrycitizen.org, and it's under construction. I want to also urge everyone in America to subscribe to the newspaper known as The Flame. Go to theflameusa.com. You can subscribe. You can get digital copy. for $3.99 a month. It's a worthy investment. They're doing great work. This is uncensored news, national news, and news relevant to each state. So again, theflameusa.com. I am Dana the Angry Citizen signing off. Thank you all. God bless you and God bless America in this dark time. And let's work together to restore our republic. Take care, everyone.